Good evening. Good evening, Jeff. How are you, dear?
Good evening. I am doing great. How are you?
You know, class is in session, and what have we learned this week?
Yeah, when I say I'm great, I say that like a little bit in that old, like, faithy kind of way. Faith it till you make it.
Oh, I'm wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I won't say fine. Fine is a cop out.
Yes.
If you're going to tell the truth, then, tell the truth. If you're going to lie, then lie, but don't sit on the fence. Fine is sitting on the fence.
Yes.
Okay, so I only gave you a very quick synopsis of what, did I say classes in session? Classes always in session, as I have discovered.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll make this as brief as Annie can, okay? Wednesday night, I had to do a pre-record for a very important network that has great reach around the globe. And I needed to have a perfect 30 minutes. I was completely prepared for everything that I needed to say and do. I was, hold on, I have to send my sister to go check on my mom. She just
Mm,
called out.
mm.
Okay, so and my life has been upside down. Anybody that watches this show knows that for the last 5 months, we have been in 24/7, 365 kind of a caregiver mode with my mom.
Mhm.
And it's been hard on everybody, including her. So that said, it has redefined the words sleep deprivation
Mm.
for me.
Yeah.
I am putting an awful lot of responsibility. I don't call my mother a burden. Under no circumstances would she ever be a burden. Under no circumstances. But it is, I'm learning what, multitudes of others have experienced through the millennium, that when it comes to this point in one's life and they need a great deal of care and constant monitoring, um, it's difficult for everybody that's involved. Now, you know me and you know I am a stickler for detail. I'm also very hard on myself. Um, I expect perfection. I strive for perfection in all things at all times. Um, and now and then I fall short, and then sometimes I fall off the cliff. That happens about once a decade.
Mhm.
And it happened Wednesday night as I was doing a late night filming, exhausted with so much makeup under my eyes that normally my bags I could like take to Florida. I mean, I at least recently. And I mean, I looked good. I felt good. I was going to nail it. All I had to do was answer a series of questions. Bada bing, bada boom. This is kind of coffee talk. I got my coffee. I hope you've
Yeah.
got yours. I know you've got yours.
Always.
Coffee talk. And then when we're done, we'll say, I'll go, so verklempt, discuss amongst yourselves.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
Walkie talk. It's a great skit. Yeah. The golden era of SNL, right?
it was the golden era.
Mhm.
Um, and so I got about 2/3 of the way through it. And one of my dearest friends, Candace, sent me a lovely message. She had no idea that I was doing this pre record. And I would have not felt anything other than the little buzz of the phone to see that I had gotten a message or feel it. And it wouldn't have thrown me at all. But
Yeah.
to get to dink, dink, and I was like, I have to stop. We have to
Mhm.
stop. and go back, and I need to try to remember everything that I said. It blew my mind because I didn't even realize how up against the wall I was, how
Mm.
overtired I was, how anxious I was to put my very best foot forward, to be my very best self. And
Mhm.
instead, that night, Wednesday night, I turned into my worst self. I mean, you think I'm vulgar on the show? The stuff that came out of my mouth, oh, I'm ashamed. I'm
Mm.
ashamed. I'm really not, because it's just language.
Mhm.
But I mean, I really like hit the wall literally and figuratively when we were all done, and I felt so sick
Mm.
inside because I felt like I didn't say what I wanted to say. I didn't complete certain thoughts. It was fractured and fragmented and had to be edited back together again at the end. And what should have taken 30 minutes took closer to 2 hours
Mm.
of our mutual friend's time that he was giving of himself. So all of this factored into the grand equation of I have failed. Um, and then at 2:30 in the morning, it was like midnight before my heart would, go back to where it needed to be so that I could breathe and so that I could sleep. And not an hour after I slept, my mother needed assistance immediately, and
Mm.
I had to be up. It was like 2:30,
Mm.
and my hands were shaking, and again with the adrenaline surge, I knew that I wouldn't go back to sleep until 4 in the morning, which is what happened. Um, and I realized that first of all, I have to forgive myself. We are all living in our own personal pressure cookers.
Mhm.
All of us.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
anybody who knows what a real pressure cooker is and does knows that if you do not release the valve on the top of that thing, it will eventually explode no matter how low the flame beneath it. The
Yeah.
pressure will
Yeah.
build up, and if you don't vent it properly, it will explode.
Yep.
And I erupted like from inside, like all the stress just poured out of me. And I cried and I cried and I mean, I slammed my hand into the wall just to try to get, some like, oh, I just wanted to punch the universe in the face. I was just that wound up. And the next morning, and it kind of startled my little dinky dog because she has never seen me behave like that.
Mhm.
And so then I had to, calm down enough to be there for her and take care of her and make sure that mom was okay. And the next morning I got up and I told mom how very, very sorry I was about how frustrated and how not myself I
Mhm.
was the night before. And she had absolutely no recollection of it at all,
Mm.
which is bittersweet, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, don't we all want to, no matter what, have a memory and be able to remember the good stuff, even if we have to remember the bad stuff to have the good stuff?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was that. It was just a very emotional thing. So
Mhm.
I got in touch with the studio where everything had to be transferred.
Mhm.
And I spoke to the producer there. And I said, I feel like, what I turned into you was fragmented, it was disjointed, it was just, fractured like like dropping a mirror.
Mm.
And I'm not happy with it at all. And we were texting and she wrote back, it's absolutely perfect.
Hmm.
Perfect. We couldn't be more pleased. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Hmm.
And she doesn't even know all that transpired and all we had to do and all the patchwork quilting we had to do to put it back together again to make it be, a cohesive flowing unit of a video. Um, and I just about I lost it. I just lost it. I cried, I yelled, I went outside just so I didn't scare my dog or my mother or my sister. And, we got acres here, all I just went outside and I just yelled at the moon. I just
Mhm.
yelled like, come on, and then I thought, and then I got to the end stage, and this was the end stage. Stop it. This
Mm.
isn't about you.
Yeah.
This is all about mom.
Mm.
And this was a thing that happened. And if you need to re-record it, you still have time to do it.
Yeah.
And if they're unhappy with it, they'll tell you because they're, perfectly honest about everything. And then I'll just re-record it either with them or with Bill. And and they said it was perfect. So I went from utter despair and self-loathing through that whole process of give yourself forgiveness, give yourself some space and some grace
Yeah.
to this isn't about you. It's all about mom. You did the best you could under the circumstances. Let it go.
Mm.
To thank you, Andrea. It was perfect. It was exactly what we needed. Thank you.
Yeah.
And so, woo, the roller coaster, I mean, it was wild. It was a wild ride. And, as I was writing to you this afternoon, I thought, okay, here's the thing. I couldn't really tell you all of that, but what I do know is that all of us, everybody I know, is going through a tumultuous life experience right now. Something that is literally life changing.
Yeah.
Not that every minute isn't different than the previous minute, of course. That's
Hmm.
why we humbly suggest perhaps you live in the moment, live in the present, not project forward into an unknown future or perseverate on the past, but
Yeah.
just try to enjoy the moment and find peace and contentment in the moment and achieve that mindset.
Yeah.
But what I've been living through is so surreal and so uh, mind-boggling in so many ways. I hadn't realized the effect that it was having on me. And
Mm.
so it's been a very reflective couple of days and kind of a cleansing and really kind of a confessional tonight,
Yeah.
because I know other people are going through a lot of stuff too. A lot of people.
Yeah.
This is a time of transition. It is the paradigm shift. It is the change
Hmm.
that will carry us into the undefined unknown
Hmm.
and prepare us for it in some way, shape, or form. If present is future and past, then it's indicative of a process where we learn what we need to learn to get us to the next step in our own journey of spiritual growth.
Yeah.
And so, forgive thyself
Mm.
is what I say to myself and what I say to all of you. Forgive thyself,
Yeah.
because if you don't, if you just constantly criticize and beat yourself up,
Mm.
if you know you did the best you could in the circumstances which are presented to you, then let it go and move on and just vow to do better next time. And if you're a stickler for details, make sure your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed and move forward, hopefully,
Hmm.
because none of us does anything to maliciously sabotage anything for anyone, particularly a network that's willing to give me airtime for my own concepts and ideas. And so I had to get to a place of peacefulness and gratitude and stillness. And that's where I am right now. And I'm sorry I took 14 minutes and 40 seconds to say it, but
Mm.
just run with it, Jeff. Just run with it.
Yeah. No, there's there's so many launching pads in what you said we could jump off of, and so much that needs to be explored there. But one thing that I learned over the years, in my years as a pastor, was that my When I would expose my own vulnerabilities, right? When I would expose my own inadequacies,
Hmm.
my proclivities, my propensity towards this, that, and the other, when I would present my imperfections,
Yeah.
right? Those were actually the most healing moments for people. When they saw Jeff Turner, the preacher, who they normally saw on stage, being bombastic and throwing, with all of his histrionics and whatever, when they would just see me be a normal person who was weak and vulnerable just like them,
Yeah.
those were the most healing moments. And actually, as you were saying that, I was thinking of a quote from Brennan Manning, who was a great Catholic writer who's since passed on. But this comes from his book Abba's Child, and he writes that in a futile attempt to erase our past, we deprive the community of our healing gift. If we conceal our wounds out of fear and shame, our inner darkness can neither be illuminated nor become a light for others. And there's something about what it means to be upright, right? When you like you read in the scripture or even just in literature, being upright, to stand upright is
Yes.
to expose the most vulnerable parts of your
Part of it.
body,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
that's one of the things that actually separates maybe a human from other species of animals, is
Hmm.
that there is still that walking on all fours, protecting that vulnerable place. But there's something about being human where we've decided to walk upright and we expose the most vulnerable parts of ourselves. And being upright in a metaphorical sense, an upright person means exposing and being willing to show our weaknesses and our flaws and our whatever, and owning our mistakes. And that is what heals people, right? I'll never forget, because when I tell you that I was a preacher through and through when I was a preacher, and I never was off. And when I mean I never was off, I mean I wasn't really even off at home. I was more normal at home than I was from the pulpit, but I was the same guy. That's just how I am. And I don't mean I was like walking around the house preaching, but I mean that I lived the same way that I preach.
Yeah.
That's just how I am. But like, I was very careful about always walking a certain way in front of other people, because I wanted to set an example and be a leader and all this kind of stuff. And so people rarely saw me just normal as a human. People rarely saw me just as a normal guy. And so in people's minds, not really intentionally, they developed this picture of Jeff Turner that was not real, and
Hmm.
that they compared themselves to, and that actually made them feel worse for being human, when I was actually trying to lift them up and help them feel better about being human. It was making them feel worse. And I'll never forget the time we had a bunch of like young adults over, and we were playing, of all things, Mortal Kombat at a church gathering. I busted out some of the old vintage games and we were just having a good time. And I happened to be a master at Mortal Kombat 2 and 3 from the back when I was like 12, and I still remember all the moves. And I was just smoking these kids left and right, and they were like, "Oh my god, how are you so good?" I'm like, you know,
Practice.
yeah, I felt like Aslan in Chronicles of Narnia. Don't cite the deep magic to me, witch. I was there when it was written, and I was
A great line.
I was just smoking them left and right. And then this one kid started to learn my strategies. And anyways, after a long series of events, he bested me and he beat me. And I got so like, I was so into it. I wasn't really mad, but I was just really getting into it, that I was like, come on. And I stood up and I like threw the controller down, not actually like in a fit of rage, but more just like in a playful, like
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I caught myself and I was like, oh, I'm not being Pastor Jeff right now. And everybody in the room was like, but this one kid told my wife later on, he was like, I've never been more inspired by anything Pastor Jeff has done or said than I was when he threw the Xbox controller and freaked out when I beat him in Mortal Kombat, because it showed me he's a normal human being just like me, and that's okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so yeah, anyways, that reminded me of that quote. When we hide our past or our darkness or our mistakes, we actually deprive the community of our healing gift. And so to bear those things is so powerful. And like you said, there's so many people I know right now who are going through so much.
Yeah.
And whether I'm just noticing it more because of the good old reticular
No,
activating
there's
system,
an
or whether it's
uptick.
actually
There's a definite uptick.
I agree with you. It definitely seems like there is. I was thinking, like, is this just a case of I bought a red car and now I see red cars everywhere? And I'm like, no, it
No.
seems like there's a whole lot of quote red cars out there. lately. And I think one of the things this is causing us to do, and we've talked about this before, and I think this is so important, and it's really been an emphasis lately in my own personal spiritual life, is really, really coming to terms with the shadow self, right? Really coming to terms with those parts of me that I would rather not think existed in me.
Yeah. Let
Because,
alone let anybody else see.
oh
Yeah.
yeah. And the point isn't just to like, but the point is to love that part of you, right?
Mhm.
The point is to forgive, even beyond forgiveness, like you getting angry the way you got angry.
At
That's
myself. Yeah.
You got angry at yourself, but that quality, when balanced with the other parts of you, is actually what makes you so excellent at what you do. You know what I mean? You're so excellent at what you do because you have that part of you that is like, God damn it, get it right, Andrea. You know what I mean? And I have that part of me too. It's just when I let it get out of balance,
Mhm.
that's when it comes off negative. But really, that's a great thing about me. And it's actually a great thing about you. It's just when we let it maybe get a little bit out of balance, but life does that to us. Life hits us in such a way where we can't help but be a little bit unbalanced sometimes. And that's when we notice the shadow. The shadow is always there,
Mhm.
but we just notice it in those times of outbursts or whatever. I had one a couple of weeks ago, man. That we had a power outage, and then we had a power surge, and it
Mhm.
fried my, like, I lost like 5 outlets got fried, and then my dryer and my
Ugh.
washing machine got fried. And of course, house insurance doesn't cover that. You have to have surge insurance. And of course, I don't have surge insurance because who does? Maybe you're smarter than me and you do, but I certainly don't have it. And
I run
so,
around and unplug everything.
yeah,
That's what I do.
and I
It's
usually
cheaper
do.
and good exercise.
I did everything but the washer and dryer when it came out, and I don't, and those were the things that went. Anyways, so I finally got all those things fixed one night, and I bought a new control board. I replaced all that. I fixed the dryer. Everything was working well, and then the dryer just crapped out on me and stopped working. And I don't know why, but I got so mad at that. And dude, I am always cool as a cucumber, Jeff, always. But I got
Pretty
so,
much me too. Cool as
yeah,
a cucumber, patient, controlled, even keeled. Yeah.
yeah.
Except when I'm not.
Yeah. But I got so mad, I almost put a hole in the laundry room wall just because and it just happened. I was like, God, and I
Yeah.
never do stuff like that. Once or twice in my
I don't
life.
think I ever did that before. I hit a
Yeah.
door jam. I just hit it as
Yeah.
hard as I could.
Yeah.
It's like it shook the whole hallway. I mean, I just had to explode
Yep.
that negative energy out.
Yep.
Get out.
Yeah. And the
I
funny
don't
thing
think
for me
I've
was
ever done that.
when I did that, the dryer all of a sudden started working, and it's worked fine ever since. So I was like,
So you took
interesting.
your energy and you shoved it through the wall, down, up the wire,
Yeah.
into the dryer.
The dryer is now powered by nothing but Jeff Turner's negative energy. No. It's not even plugged in anymore. No. But like,
That's great. Oh,
but
god.
like, it was just that moment, and and it took me by surprise. Like, that made me stop again. And I've had a few moments like that in my life where I've just had this outburst to the point where I stop and I'm like, whoa, dude,
Wow.
what was
Wow.
that? It was
Who
like
are you and what have you done with yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
like something peeked around from the corner, and I was like, what is going on? And I just stopped and I thought about it, and I was like, why did that come up in me? That came up in me because I love my family. I want them taken care of. And doing the laundry is one of my things I do to take care of my family. You know what I mean? I do the laundry. It's one of the things I do. And it's a terrible inconvenience to have that not working. It's just whatever. And I just realized in that moment, that's just a part of me that was maybe a little too overly concerned in that moment for the care of my family. And so it manifested itself in that way. But that quality in itself isn't bad. It's just that it was out of balance. But when it's in balance with the rest of my character, it's actually a good thing. It's one of the things that keeps the household running. You know what I mean? And so to make friends with that shadow part of myself, I now realize that's exactly the part of me that I need in a lot of experiences of life. If I didn't have that, I would be in a corner, rocking back and forth, biting my fist,
Mhm, mhm.
singing Mary Had a Little Lamb to myself 99% of the time. You know what I mean? But it's
Yes, I do. I do. That's probably not my song of choice, but You
I'd
know,
probably be
something
singing
like
something else
that.
stupid. It's
Yeah,
just what came to mind, but it would probably be more profanity laden. But yeah, still,
yeah,
Mary
yeah,
Had a Little Lamb came to mind. But like that part of me that I so often want to reject, not only is it healing for others to see that we're normal people with flaws and are just like anybody else, it's also healing for me to recognize it, to realize what its function is, rather than trying to cast it out. Because when I try to cast it out, it's a great quote from Nietzsche. He says, "Beware in exercising your demons, lest you exercise or cast out the best part of yourself." That there's things about ourselves that are actually good things that if we were suddenly without them, we would realize we can't function without those things. It's just that they have to be in balance with the other parts of our being, and
yeah,
part of forgiving ourselves is stopping and recognizing, okay, that's actually a beautiful quality that's simply out of balance in this moment, and I can forgive myself because I know my intention. I didn't
right.
want to abuse the drywall because now I got to fix that. I was concerned for the care of my family in that moment. I was concerned for my budget. I was concerned for a lot of that's what that was. That's concern for the people that I love and live every day of my life to serve. It just got a little out of balance. And so I can forgive myself and love myself because I know that's just the part of me that's striving and aiming for the highest thing in life.
Yeah,
Anyways.
yeah, absolutely. And I think that it is that, you know, self-care is a real thing.
Yeah.
Self-love is a real thing.
Yes.
Self-forgiveness is a very important thing.
Hmm.
And too many of us, I think, kind of lose it when we neglect to acknowledge our flaws and foibles,
Hmm.
especially when they surface,
Yes.
and to give ourselves permission to fail. Because,
Mm.
the thing is that throughout the course of life, as I have learned in my 64 years on the planet, you're going to fail more than you're going to succeed,
Oh yeah.
and if you can figure out how to make it right, how to make amends, how to make more of an effort the next time,
Hmm.
not overlook the little minutia of
Yeah.
life, like turning the volume down on my phone before I get online. That's a tiny thing. I
Mhm.
don't think that I have ever forgotten it before. And I was just so tired, not making excuses. This is a fact.
Yeah.
I was so tired and so befuddled and so concentrated on what I was going to say, how I was going to answer the
Mm.
questions that were being posed to me,
Mhm.
that I was all caught up in the cerebral rather than taking care of my little digits in my little phone.
Mhm. Yeah.
And sometimes you can't do it
Yeah.
all at once.
No, you
And
can't.
I think that giving ourselves permission to be what we are,
Mhm.
which is human,
Mhm.
well, in my case, mostly, not completely. And see, that's another thing with me. I really do feel like I should be better. I mean, I have been touched by spirit, I have been touched by extraterrestrials. I have this magical, wondrous, just incredible life. And in my headspace, um, I like to slip on out of 3D, as you well know, as frequently as possible. Um, and I was kind of out of out of my standard dimension. I was someplace else because of the subject matter
Mhm.
that I needed to discuss in order to answer the questions appropriately. We are so imbued, so inundated with, not all of us, but some of us have set very high standards for ourselves.
Yes.
And if we fall short, then it feels much more devastating to us than how it appears from the outside world,
Oh yeah.
unless we call attention to it. And in the calling of attention to it comes the healing.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree with you, because other people see that you have the same problems that they do, and
Yeah.
that not all of us handles all of our problems in maybe the most appropriate way possible,
Hmm.
because we are emotional creatures.
Yep.
And when we start suppressing our emotions, dismissing our emotions, nullifying that which is integral to our character and
Yes.
our behavior, then we cease to be the multidimensional
Hmm.
light beings that we are in a sometimes very dark world.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
sometimes we blend a little bit into the darkness, and then we have to find our way back to the light. And that process, I think, is part of our spiritual evolution.
Yes. Yeah. And one of the most comforting things to me has been, I Christ is the archetypal human as far as I'm concerned that I aim to follow. And in the story of Jesus, at least in the Orthodox Christian interpretation of the story of Jesus, eventually they came to settle on Jesus as being fully divine. Well, there's an interesting thing that happens in the story of Jesus when he was crucified, because crucifixion is about as bad as being crucified. That pretty much typifies a bad day, right? And when Jesus is crucified, we are to believe that he is fully God, but he's also fully human, if you follow the creeds. And the way that Jesus the Christ responds to being crucified, there's a lot of different statements that come from the cross. But to me, one of the most striking is his quotation from Psalms 22, my God, why have you
Thank
forsaken me?"
you.
Now, Jesus himself earlier in the Gospels says, "When you lift me up, when you crucify me, everybody will leave me, but my Father won't leave me." So Jesus already stated that, hey, when I'm crucified, you're going to think I'm forsaken of God, but I'm not. So prior to the cross, he already has the knowledge that he won't be forsaken, and yet when he's smack dab in the middle of that event, he feels forsaken, and he expresses a feeling of having been forsaken. So the beautiful thing about that, and Slavoj Žižek writes about this in The Puppet and the Dwarf, and I believe in his correspondence with John Milbank called The Monstrosity of Christ, which is a fantastic read, by the way. I need to reread that. And a lot of other of his works as well, he makes reference to this, but that in that act where Jesus declares that he's forsaken of God, essentially what he does, I mean, he shows us that the divine perfection, when put in our place, responds to the situations we experience exactly as we respond to them. And for some, that could seem discouraging, because then it seems like there's no higher aim. But for me, there's nothing more encouraging than that, because it lets me know that I'm doing the divine thing when I think I'm doing the human thing. You know what I mean? When
Yep.
I feel like I've failed, the divine that's how the divine would respond to the situations that I face. And so in that moment, I can rest assured that I'm not really out of step with God or spirit or source or the universe or whatever. This is how God responded. And if I do, and then when you read Psalms 2, which is what Jesus is quoting from, at the very end, it goes from this like real, my God, why have you forsaken me, to at the end in verses like 23 through 24, this very triumphant declaration of the fact that I'm not forsaken and you've redeemed me, blah, 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 blah. So it's like, but it had to start with that feeling of forsakenness, that honest confession of how he's experiencing the experience of being crucified to get to that place of triumphal or triumphant declaration. And I think that we all need to come to terms with that fact that it is not to be human is to be divine, right? So I love the quote. I think it comes from Athanasius or Ignatius. I could be mixing the two up in my head. That God, in becoming what we are, has made, this is a way of interpreting it, basically. In becoming human, God has made being human being divine, right? Because God becomes what we are and shows us that when human, God is everything that we are. And so we can look upon our humanity as being fully godlike and fully divine. And so what am I cutting out a little bit here, Andrea? Because I feel
Uh,
my picture
yes,
keeps snapping.
yeah, it was a little choppy and a little
Okay.
truncated, but I was able to understand. I think
Okay.
everybody will discern what you said. I hope so.
Okay. My picture kept going out. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't talking into the void.
Yeah, no, you're not
Okay.
talking into the void, but
Okay.
if you want to hop out and come back into the link,
Yeah.
that might work better.
Let me do that.
And I'll carry on until you get back. Okay. Okay. Oh God, he's so freaking brilliant, huh? Don't tell him I said so. Well, I tell him that all the time because he's so brilliant. Um, I hope that this lesson, the test, my test was Wednesday night. I really, if I passed, it was, um, and then the lesson comes on the other side of the test. And so we're not, I don't think that Jeff is unique. I don't think that I am unique. I think that all of us are going through uh, trials and tribulations. One of my, in fact, I wrote it and I used it in the trilogy when Jesus Christ says, uh, "Forgive them; they know not what they do." That I see the element of forgiveness as being integrated with the healing life, death, afterlife experience, gratitude and forgiveness.
Mm.
Um, and my reading of that was that there was some part, for instance, in the Garden of Gethsemane, where, and I do not pretend to be a scholar on, on Jesus or anything, but there are things that have really stuck with me over the years, through the course of going through catechism and, all the being a Catholic for so many years of my young life. A lot of that indoctrination, that dogma that stuck with me. You know, you got the Holy Trinity: guilt, shame, fear. There you go. Oh, there you go. And I think that him saying in the Garden of Gethsemane that it had to happen this way.
Yeah.
Basically, it had to happen this way, or it would have happened another way. And
Yes.
I think that there was part of Jesus that was going through that experience, knowing
Yeah.
of his impending doom, knowing that it would be torture,
Hmm.
knowing that it would be agonizing, knowing there
Yeah.
was, I think, still a part of him that was grateful that
Hmm.
it was over, because he perceived what was about to happen to him
Hmm.
and his sacrifice
Yeah.
as washing away the sins of the world, a
Hmm.
cleansing of all of humanity.
Yeah.
Um, Now, I personally don't buy into that,
Hmm.
because I just don't think. I think that if based on the description of the word sin, you have to earn those and own them.
Yeah.
Those infractions, those,
Mhm.
you know, people that commit murder should never be able to have an insanity plea, because I think that to murder anybody is an insane act. So all murderers, it's an all or nothing proposition with me.
Right.
And but all the years that I studied growing up Catholic, what I learned about Jesus, that he was so giving and so forgiving,
Yeah.
that he perceived his mission to be to cleanse the people
Hmm.
of the world with his words, his message, and his loss, for it to be so horrible that now 2000 years later, he's still the penultimate archetype of uh, God consciousness on this planet.
Right.
On this planet, billions of people are followers of Jesus Christ, billions. And no matter what their interpretation, um, he left an imprint, an impression, footprints in the sand.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, but it was not just the message itself, it was the knowledge of his suffering,
Yes.
and that he was able, in his suffering, in his extreme pain, to
Mm-hmm.
be able to ask what he perceived to be his father, God,
Mm-hmm.
to forgive them for torturing him.
Mm-hmm.
That is the highest act of altruism that I think that any of us could ever strive for, or even pretend to be able to comprehend.
Yeah. No, and I think that's very profound. And there's two really profound things in which, well, there's many profound things in what you said, but two that stick out to me in particular, which is the fact that, well, there's a quote from scripture that says that it was for the joy set before him that he endured the cross.
Mhm.
So there is a sense, and everyone knows the famous, well, most people know the famous Julian of Norwich quote, all will be well, all shall be, or all shall be well, all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. But what most people don't know is that right before saying that, she says, it was necessary that there should be sin, but all shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. So right before saying all shall be well, she, in this divine vision she's having, claimed, says, everything that's happened that's been bad, evil, sin as we perceive it, it was necessary that these things should be happen, that these things should happen. However, the ultimate conclusion I've reached is that ultimately all shall be well. And there is something powerful, and I see it in Jesus' response to his tormentors and executioners as well, that he saw the other side of this experience, that this would, in some way, shape, or form, however it was he perceived it versus how it actually turned out, that there was a perception on his part that this will lead to the redemption of humanity somehow. And so he could look at his tormentors and say, you know what, in some way, though you are at your absolute worst right now, in some unintended way, you are working for humanity's best. And I think that's one of the first steps when we find ourselves in the midst of our own personal hells and crucifixions, is to
Yeah,
be able to look at our own quote tormentors and say, right now you suck as far as how you're behaving is concerned.
yeah.
But somehow, some way, and I know this based on Bayesian reasoning and prior probability, that the bad stuff always makes me better. And maybe that's just because I choose to hunker down and get better in the midst of it. I
It's
don't know.
not counterintuitive. If
No.
you really extrapolate it out,
Yep.
it does make perfect sense, because
Yep.
it's, for instance, a bike, the wheel of a bike will not work if some of the spokes have been removed. It'll be off
Yes.
balance, off kilter. You'll end up taking all those spokes are in place for a reason.
Yep.
They're all identical in every bike,
Yeah.
every wheel for every bike. And it's because they create balance, and they
Exactly.
all work in tandem together, so
Yes.
that thing spins smoothly and rolls right along.
Yep. Yep.
So, as a metaphor, in order to move forward, you have to achieve that balance, and all the elements have to be working together in
Yes.
order to do that.
Yep.
And that includes, as you described, the darkness, the shadow,
Yep.
that part of us that, and again, I'll make a quick reference to the Cherokee grandfather who tells his grandson that there are two wolves inside us in conflict, fighting at all time.
Hmm.
And, one is loving and giving and compassionate and kind and filled with, light. And then there is the dark wolf, the mean wolf, the
Mhm.
one filled with avarice, the one that's greedy, the one that's, and the young child, wide-eyed, says, but grandfather, which wolf wins? If they're fighting, which wolf wins? And his grandfather says, the one you feed. That
Yeah.
does not negate the existence of the other wolf.
Sure. Yep.
The one that you nurture and nourish and feed
Yep.
is the one that will be dominant in
Yep.
your character, in your personality, in your behavior.
Yep.
And even the occasional outburst, I think, is the dark wolf.
Mhm.
It might not be as strong as the other, but that doesn't mean it's dead. It's
Right.
still there. We live in duality. We live in, that constant conflict even within ourselves.
Mhm.
And it's why we swear to
Mhm.
burn off energy, to, oh, that fucking idiot. I mean,
Right.
it's just,
Right.
it's like it's just a little mini outburst,
Yep. And
uh,
when you don't allow yourself those, you have major outbursts.
yeah, yeah.
Yep.
If you suppress it and repress it in
Yep.
you, then eventually it's gonna blow. It's the pressure cooker.
Absolutely.
If you
Yep.
don't vent it, if you do not turn that little knob and let some of that steam off,
Mhm.
it's gonna.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think all of us need to visualize, thoughts are things. We
Mhm.
should all visualize when the pressure is building and building and building, coping skills, methods
Mhm.
for releasing that steam. Even if you visualize yourself in the pot, and instructing somebody to vent it for you,
Yeah.
and that means find a friend that you can trust and you can talk to. And if I were more of a normal person and a little bit less than a paranormal person and didn't have my own show, that I do with you, Soul School,
Mhm.
I'm learning my lesson publicly with you. You're
Mhm.
learning your lessons publicly with me.
Yeah.
And everyone that we touch is sitting there to some extent or another going, oh, yeah, I remember when something like that happened to me. And I just blew my cool. I just
Mhm.
blew my stack,
Yeah.
and it was the tiniest little thing. It's like life is a whole series of dominoes, and all you have to do is poof,
Mhm.
just barely touch it. And down they, and that's how fragile it is. That's how fragile our emotions can be. That's how raw our emotions can be. You froze up on me, darling. Are you still there? You are. You're there. Oh, he's going to come back in. So, we're really almost at the end of this tonight. But I really hope that uh, when you're finding fault with yourself and you're being uber critical of yourself, when you are beating yourself up, I'm just talking to everybody at once, Jeff. Um,
Okay.
Take a moment and step back if you can and breathe. Just breathe and bring yourself into your inner sanctum. Bring yourself back to true north
Mhm.
in your moral compass, in your safe space inside yourself, where y- you're you're dwelling really most of the time
Mhm.
anyway. You're only expressing that outwardly, when you communicate with other people. Find somebody that you trust and talk to them
Yes.
the way that I'm talking to you tonight, because just having this conversation with you has helped me. I feel lighter. I feel better. I feel more fulfilled. I feel a sense of camaraderie and familial kinship with everybody out there. I feel divinely and supremely human in your majestic presence and in the majestic presence of all of those who join us here every week. And I am deeply grateful for indulging my confession, um, to you and to everybody else that's watching.
Mm.
We only have a few minutes left, so why don't you wrap us up, Jeff?
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I agree with you 100%. You know, no matter what you're going through, no matter what outbursts you've seen, whatever attitudes you've listen, know that that is coming from a pure place in you that wants the best for you, that wants the best for your family. That's a part of you that is overcompensating
Yeah,
in the midst of circumstances that seem very much out of your control. And so there's a part of you that feels like it needs to kick it into high gear and take control and get things to where they need to be. And maybe the energy is a little unbalanced, but still that is a part of you that is manifesting itself because it wants what's best for you and those you love. And so forgive yourself when there is the outburst. Realize that's a perfectly divine part of you that just in that moment maybe got a little bit too flamboyant or something, I don't know, but you're okay and you can forgive yourself and love yourself exactly as you are. And I've had this on my heart all day and I almost forgot to say it, but it was at 4:44 today when it came to me. When I looked at the timer and it was 4444, it came back to me. Like, I really feel like there's somebody, you've really gotten bad news and you really feel as though this is just like the end of something, that this is the end of something. And listen, it may very well be the end of something, be it a form of employment, be it whatever, but it seems to you like this is the end, and like I don't think I'll ever recover from this. And this sounds, as it's coming out of my mouth, cheap to me because it seems just kind of like a thing you say to people, but I really mean this, and I wouldn't say if I didn't feel it. Like, this is going to be a turning point for you. This thing that seems like an end is going to be a turning point for you. Like, you're being like pushed through a door that you would not have otherwise walked through. You would never have walked through this door on your own. Maybe you just lack the courage to do it, and that's totally fine. So forces are conspiring on your behalf to push you through this door, and being pushed always feels like a negative when you feel the force of something else propelling you forward, but it's propelling you forward because it loves you and it's taking care of you. And so the door that you're being pushed out of right now, you're only being pushed out of because there is something that is going to open itself up in front of you in the next 2 to 3 weeks that is going to blow your mind. And I really feel this in my guts tonight to tell somebody this, to give you hope so that you don't give up, so that you don't implode and crumble in on yourself as a result of whatever this seemingly devastating news is that's been delivered to you. And I'm not talking to everybody. I'm talking about a specific situation. And I think if this refers to you, if this is you, you're feeling it like when the dentist hits the cavity in your tooth and it just zings you. Like, you felt it when I said it. But very bad news, seemingly very bad news that has felt like it represents the end of something. It actually represents you being pushed and propelled forward by forces that are working in your favor to move you into a place you would not have gone through on your own. Anyways, I really felt I needed to say that. So I just wanted to get it out before the timer ran out. So
I'm so glad that you did.
yes.
And folks, we love you. We honor you. And all I can say is just keep on keeping on and
Yes.
love and forgive yourself.
Hmm.
And with that, I wish you all a pleasant good evening.
Yes.
Class dismissed.
Good night. Peace.